The glass doors shut softly behind Thomas Davidson. Arthur Williams calmly returned to her work. After all, there was still plenty left to clean up. But now, for the first time in years, she was cleaning up the kind of filth that truly mattered. 6 months later, Davidson Industries was no more. The company had officially shut down. Thomas Davidson was serving a 16-year prison sentence for corporate fraud, systemic discrimination, and tax evasion. His mansion had been auctioned off to compensate the victims of his crimes. Arthur Williams now sat in her new office on the 20th floor inside the very same building where she had once scrubbed toilets. Her corporate compliance consultancy was growing rapidly, advising companies determined to avoid repeating Davidson's fatal mistakes. "Mom, you still have 3 more interview requests," Maya, now 13, announced, as she neatly sorted through her mother's mail with astonishing efficiency. Marcus Torres entered carrying a stack of contracts. "IBM wants to sign with you. Looks like your reputation for cleaning up corporate ethics is spreading nationwide." Arthur smiled and gazed out the window at the bustling streets below. People moved in every direction, each carrying their own struggles, dreams, and dignity, each one deserving of respect. That morning, she received a letter from prison. For the first time, Thomas Davidson had sent a genuine apology. Too late to save his company or his freedom, but never too late to acknowledge the humanity he had once trampled. The greatest revenge was never the destruction of Thomas Davidson. It was the building of something far greater than anything he had ever dared imagine. Arthur had proven that those considered invisible were anything but. They watched, and when they chose to act, they rewrote the rules entirely. If this story of how intelligence and patience triumphed over arrogance and prejudice has inspired you, subscribe now to discover more true stories. Stories that prove justice always finds its way even when we least expect it. She tried to brush it off in the handover briefing. "We just had to deal with a disruptive passenger trying to access first class. I handed him over to security, and the situation's been resolved." What Thomas didn't know was that Alex, the young staffer who had recognized Arthur, was already typing furiously on his phone. "You won't believe this. Thomas just humiliated Arthur Reynolds." Yes, that Arthur Reynolds of Phoenix Tech. At 9:47 p.m., the first signal of trouble appeared at Pinnacle's operations center. An IT technician noticed odd glitches in the booking system, minor random, but targeting the airline's most profitable routes. Probably just a temporary bug, the system's supervisor concluded, brushing aside the warnings. The next morning, Richard Hampton, CEO of Pinnacle Airways, received an unexpected call while eating breakfast. "Richard, this is Caroline from the board. We need to discuss an incident with a VIP passenger yesterday." Hampton frowned. "Which passenger?" "Arthur Reynolds, founder of Phoenix Technologies." The blood drained from Hampton's face. Phoenix wasn't just any company. They were responsible for cybersecurity systems across multiple rival airlines, and Pinnacle had recently rejected Phoenix's proposal in favor of a cheaper provider. As Pinnacle's leadership began to panic, Arthur arrived at his San Francisco office, where Julian Singh, chief legal officer, was waiting with a thick file. 5 years of Pinnacle's internal records, Julian explained. Passenger complaints from Black and Latino customers systematically ignored. An unofficial extra screening policy for first-class travelers who didn't fit their expected profile. And 3 racial discrimination lawsuits quietly settled under NDAs. Helen walked in with an update. Phase 1 of the Phoenix protocol is complete. We have full access to their internal systems and have identified an ally inside. She projected a woman's photo onto the screen. Victoria Chun, VP of Operations. 3 years ago, she submitted a detailed report on systemic discrimination within Pinnacle. It was buried, and she was sidelined. Arthur stared at the face on the screen. Reach out to her, quietly. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, Pinnacle Airways was buckling under chaos. Booking systems kept crashing. Flights were inexplicably delayed. VIP customers discovered their first-class tickets had been downgraded to economy. Thomas Parker, facing a furious line of passengers, was summoned to an emergency meeting. When she walked in, she found not only her supervisor, but also the head of HR and a company attorney. "We need to talk about the incident with Mr. Reynolds yesterday," her supervisor said gravely. "Mr. Who?" Thomas asked, genuinely confused. "Arthur Reynolds, the passenger you blocked from boarding first class." Thomas went pale. "Oh, him. He was being rude, and I followed procedure." "What procedure exactly?" the lawyer cut in scribbling notes. Back in Arthur's office, a live screen tracked the flood of social media posts. The hashtag Pinnacle racism was spreading rapidly as passengers shared similar experiences. This is just the beginning, Arthur said, eyes fixed on the countdown clock. 48 hours, 13 minutes, 42 seconds. What Pinnacle didn't realize was that every passing minute, every failed attempt to control the crisis, every denial only dragged them closer to collapse. Arthur had waited decades for this moment, building enough power and influence to take on not just Thomas Parker, but the entire system designed to demean people like him. And while CEO Hampton believed the issue could be contained with a resignation letter and a public apology, he had no idea Arthur's true plan went far beyond exposure. It wasn't just about revealing discrimination, it was about flipping the balance of power. As Arthur had told Helen before boarding his jet, we're not just punishing a person or a company, we're changing the rules of the game. On the third day after the incident, Richard Hampton jolted awake at 4:18 a.m. to the sound of his phone ringing relentlessly. His CFO was on the line. Richard, every single one of our operating systems has collapsed. Not just reservations, everything. We're talking about a total shutdown. Check-in, boarding, aircraft communications, payroll, nothing was functioning. Hampton threw on his clothes, mind racing at the scale of losses. Every hour offline meant millions gone. As he drove toward headquarters, the radio broke in with breaking news. We're receiving reports of massive disruptions at Pinnacle Airways. Thousands of passengers are stranded at airports nationwide. Inside Phoenix Technologies Command Center, Arthur Reynolds watched calmly as rows of monitors displayed airport chaos. Pinnacle's executives caught on hidden cameras in despair, and the company's stock price plunging in real time. Phase 2 complete, Helen reported. We have full control of their systems. Good, Arthur replied. Initiate Phase 3. At that same moment, every major newsroom across the country received encrypted packets. Pinnacle's internal files, executive emails discussing how to filter first-class passengers, memos detailing how to handle travelers who didn't fit the profile, a trove of ignored discrimination complaints, and most damning of all, hard evidence that CEO Richard Hampton had personally covered up 3 racial lawsuits with secret settlements. At 9 a.m., the nation's largest news channel cut into its regular programming. Breaking news: leaked documents reveal a culture of systemic racism at Pinnacle Airways. The company is accused of enforcing an unspoken policy to keep Black and Latin passengers from accessing first class. Inside Pinnacle's headquarters, panic reached a fever pitch. Lawyers sprinted down the hallways, the PR team scrambled to draft desperate responses, but it was useless. The system was completely paralyzed. Who the hell is doing this to us? Hampton roared, slamming the conference table. And how do we stop it? Just then, his assistant entered, face pale as paper. Mr. Hampton, Arthur Reynolds is in the lobby. He's demanding to see the board, immediately. A heavy silence fell. Hampton swallowed hard, throat dry. Send him in. When Arthur walked into the boardroom, there was no trace of the humiliation he had suffered just days earlier. Impeccably dressed, he carried himself with quiet confidence, heading straight for the center of the table, where Hampton and 6 board members stared at him with a mix of fear and contempt. Please take a seat, Mr. Reynolds, Hampton said, struggling to maintain authority. I take it this situation is connected to you? Arthur allowed himself a faint smile. No, Mr. Hampton. The situation is entirely about you. I'm merely the catalyst. He placed a tablet on the table and connected it to the room's projection system. Let me show you exactly what's happening to Pinnacle Airways right now. The screen lit up with a world map littered with red lights, each one a Pinnacle aircraft grounded, unable to depart. Another graph displayed stock prices plummeting in real time. A third feed showed social media exploding with damning headlines. In precisely 24 hours, Arthur explained calmly, Pinnacle Airways will lose approximately 68% of its market value. The company's insurance contracts contain a clause regarding operational disruptions lasting longer than 48 hours. That clause will trigger tomorrow. And as I predicted, your largest shareholders have already begun emergency liquidation. One board member shot up from his chair, face red with rage. This is blackmail. Illegal. No, Mr. Peterson, Arthur replied firmly. This is consequence, and entirely legal. He slid a document across the table. This is an acquisition offer from Phoenix Technologies to buy Pinnacle Airways at 30% of its market value as of 3 days ago. A generous offer since in just 48 hours your value will be zero. Hampton's face drained of color as his eyes raced down the page. You can't do this, he whispered. I can, and I am. Unlike you, I have full documentation to justify my actions once the investigation begins. Or did you think years of racial discrimination would never demand a price? At that moment, Victoria Chun, silent until now at the far end of the table, rose to her feet and moved beside Arthur. I support this acquisition, she declared firmly, and I have 3 years' worth of ignored reports to prove my position. The betrayal hit Hampton like a punch to the chest. Victoria, you side with him, I side with Justice Richard, she answered coldly. Something you should have considered long ago. One by one, the board members folded, realizing they had no choice. With operations paralyzed, reputation destroyed, and stock in freefall, Arthur's offer was the only path forward. Outside the boardroom, Thomas Parker was escorted out of the building, belongings packed into a box ID badge confiscated. I don't understand, she protested. Why am I being punished? I only followed protocol. The HR manager didn't bother to respond. They both knew the truth. Inside, the countdown clock on the projection screen hit 0, and at the very moment the final board member signed the transfer agreement, Pinnacle's entire system came back online. Arthur stood, adjusted his suit. Ladies and gentlemen, starting tomorrow, Pinnacle Airways will no longer exist. In its place, Horizon Airlines, where dignity and respect will not be empty slogans. As he left the room, his phone buzzed with a message from Helen. Phase 3 complete. The empire has fallen. But no one inside that boardroom knew the real transformation was only beginning. Arthur's plan was never just to acquire a company. It wasn't to change one corporation, it was to transform an entire industry. And contrary to what Hampton believed, this was never about revenge. This was justice and a restoration of what had been broken. Arthur wasn't destroying Pinnacle. He was rebuilding something greater from its ashes. Meanwhile, across airports nationwide, passengers were stunned to see delayed Pinnacle flights suddenly displaying a new name on the departure boards, Horizon Airlines. They had no idea who was behind the shift or how their journeys were about to change forever. 3 months after the takeover, Arthur Reynolds stood on the rooftop of his San Francisco office, watching the sunrise. The city looked different that morning, not just because of the golden light cascading over the skyline, but because it felt as if something fundamental in the world had shifted. Mr. Reynolds, they've arrived, Helen informed him, breaking his quiet reflection. Arthur straightened his suit and entered the conference room, where a team of reporters from major networks awaited. This was the official launch day of Horizon Airlines, and the business world was watching with fascination at the fastest, most comprehensive turnaround the airline industry had ever seen. How does it feel to be the first black CEO to take over a major U.S. airline? A reporter immediately asked as Arthur sat down. Arthur smiled calmly. Mostly I feel responsible, he replied. Responsible for proving that real leadership doesn't come from imposing power, but from transformation. Meanwhile, miles away, Thomas Parker was enduring her 3rd job interview of the week. Doors kept shutting in her face. Her name was now synonymous with the scandal that had brought Pinnacle crashing down. I'm sorry, Ms. Parker, the HR manager said, sliding her resume back across the desk. Your background doesn't align with our company values. The words were familiar, only the office changed. Ironically, Thomas herself had now become the one who didn't meet the standards. Richard Hampton, too, was battling his own demons. Federal investigations into systemic racial discrimination and financial fraud had led to criminal charges. His empire collapsed, his reputation was destroyed, and his wealth bled away in legal fees and restitution. At Horizon Airlines' new headquarters, Alex, the young employee who had once recognized Arthur on that fateful day, now led a newly created division, the Department of Inclusive Experience. Our mission is simple, Alex told his new team. Every passenger must be treated with the same dignity, no matter who they are or what seat they sit in. Victoria Chun, now promoted to Chief Operating Officer, walked through the freshly renovated international terminal, observing the changes. Signs in multiple languages greeted travelers. Staff from diverse backgrounds worked at the check-in counters. Overhead, the company's new slogan glowed in blue and gold horizonte, where the skies belong to everyone. But the transformation was more than cosmetic. Arthur had driven deep structural reform scholarship programs for young people from underserved communities who aspired to enter aviation partnerships with historically black colleges and universities' HBCUs, and a rigorous feedback system to identify and correct any act of discrimination. 6 months after his takeover, Horizon Airlines stunned the industry by becoming the highest-rated carrier for customer satisfaction. Its stock price, once devalued, had tripled. One rainy afternoon, Arthur received an unexpected call. "Mr. Reynolds, this is James Parker Thomas's husband." Arthur motioned for Helen to leave the room. "I know who you are, Mr. Parker. My wife, she's broken. She can't find work. Our health insurance has expired, and my daughter needs treatment." Arthur closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the moment. "Mr. Parker, what your wife did to me was just a symptom of a larger problem. I have no interest in destroying her life." After a long silence, Arthur continued. "Tell her to come to Horizon's HR office next week. Not for a service job that would be reckless given her past. But we have an opening in our awareness training program. Perhaps seeing things from the other side will be its own education." That evening, at a fundraiser hosted by the Phoenix Foundation for Disadvantaged Youth, Arthur reunited with Evelyn Wade, his old mentor and first investor. "You could have destroyed that company completely," Evelyn remarked as they watched the scholarship students laughing and chatting nearby. "Why choose to transform it instead of wiping it out?" Arthur considered for a moment. Because destruction only breeds more destruction. To truly break the cycle of prejudice, we have to create something better to replace it. He paused, his gaze following a young boy fumbling to straighten his very first tie. "I didn't just want to win, Evelyn. I wanted to change the rules. Real victory isn't watching the oppressor fall, it's building something that makes his way of thinking obsolete." 6 weeks later, a 70-year-old African-American man boarded a Horizon flight to visit his daughter. When the flight attendant guided him to a first-class seat, he hesitated. "There must be a mistake. My ticket is for economy." "No mistake, sir," the chief attendant replied with a smile. "Mr. Reynolds launched a program called Horizon Legacy. Each week we select passengers who once lived through segregation to experience the comforts they were once denied." As the elderly man sat down, he found a personal card placed on the seat. "For future generations to know that the skies belong to everyone. Arthur Reynolds." Arthur Reynolds's takeover of Pinnacle was not merely a display of financial power. It was a reminder that true justice does not come from retaliation, but from rebuilding. He had not only shut down a discriminatory company, he had opened up a new horizon of possibility. Where many expected a revenge story, Arthur delivered something far stronger: transformation. Because the true answer to prejudice is never more division, but a world where those barriers cease to matter. If this story resonates with you, if you believe transformation is stronger than revenge, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring true stories about people who not only faced injustice, but turned it into something better for everyone. For as Arthur Reynolds taught us, the real revolution isn't in tearing systems down, but in rebuilding them with greater humanity.